What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
What's going on, guys? It's week 14 cashing points. Me, Graham Barfield, Ryan Heath this week. Got a fun 11-game slate on tap. Let's get right into it. New Orleans Saints at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Total here is 41.5. Saints are 8.5-point underdogs. On the injury front, no Alvin Kamara. Chris Olave questionable with a back issue after limited practices on Thursday and Friday. Graham, the total doesn't really indicate a ton of upside in this game. I do still think this is a pretty interesting game to stack up for tournaments. Tyler Shuck projecting fairly well across the industry. It's largely a volume play, leads all quarterbacks in rush attempts over the last 2 weeks behind only Jacoby Brissett in pass attempts over the last couple of weeks. I'm curious what you think of a $4,600 Tyler Shuck and his pass catchers here in this spot, Graham.
Yeah, like Saints again, like Tyler Shuck again. We saw Saints stacks, Jet stacks at the top of leaderboards last week. Ryan was on Jets, I was on Saints, and it kind of was like Jets definitely were optimal, but it was pretty close between both of them. I think they make sense again this week. Shuck, like you mentioned, way too cheap. The stack is very easy. If you want to get double or triple with it, you can bring in Johnson and Vele. To me, Olave is still clearly the best play. I mean, the volume has been amazing. But really, I mean, this Tampa Bay secondary, guys, has been terrible. I mean, I'm not, like, super stoked to play Tyler Shuck and Olave, but, like, it's a great matchup, better matchup than last week. You look at the last 5 weeks, I mean, they've given up the most fantasy points per game to opposing outside wide receivers. It's, like, kind of a perfect spot here. And then you've got Baker with Bucky back, Godwin looking better. Wish we had Evans back in this game, but this game has some real shootout appeal, like you were saying, and could kind of see it being a couple turnover, but like a 27-24 type over.
Yeah, I really like that angle. I do think this is a pretty fun one to stack up for tournaments. Ryan, I'm curious what you think of this game overall here.
Yeah, I really like it. Agree with pretty much everything that Graham just said. On the Saints side, Shuck Olave, really awesome skinny stack, multiple ways to make it a double. The Buccaneers are a little more interesting just to talk about, I think, though. I'm not as into stacking from the Baker side just because we don't know exactly how healthy he is. But it's like an interesting game theory thing to think about, right? Because Baker was incredible over the first few weeks of the season before he hurt his oblique in week 7. We just haven't seen him play as well. My assumption is he's been hurt. We know that he hurt a shoulder as well a couple weeks ago. So it really just hinges on Baker Mayfield's health to me. On that front, I mean, he looked a lot better just to my eyes last week than he had in recent games, was moving a little bit better. I had a little more zip on the ball. The stats were better, at least in some respects. Last week for Baker, best yards per attempt, best adjusted completion percentage, highest deep throw rate since that initial oblique injury in week 7. Like his receivers let him down with a couple of critical drops, but I do think that we could low-key be back to just Baker being relatively healthy and able to like set off a game environment all by himself. So you have to have some interest here. I think I do think like Jacoby Brissett at a very similar price point is just a better play, but Baker's really interesting. I want to get to some. Emeka Egbuka also really interesting. Like the volume's been amazing. The production hasn't been there. It's really just been a matter of catchable air yards, which he hasn't seen many of with Baker banged up. But yeah, it's just the same thing. If he isn't banged up, then great. Egbuka's an awesome play. Awesome matchup and all that. 7th most schedule adjusted to the outside allowed by the Saints over the past 5 weeks. So I think you can go that direction. And then Bucky Irving is also just worth discussing kind of separately from the stacks. So he got 19 touches last week on basically just close to a 50% snap share. We knew he'd be on a snap count going in. Really the difference between last week's usage and his pre-injury usage was he just wasn't running as many routes. Rashad White was on the field more running routes, was targeted more. That wasn't the case through the first 4 weeks when Irving was averaging over 18 DraftKings fantasy points per game. So I think it's pretty interesting this week to just say, well, maybe he gets back up to his full playing time. The Buccaneers really need to win every game going forward, with the Panthers kind of pushing them for the position. This is a divisional game that could have big playoff implications. So yeah, I kind of like going to Bucky in tournaments. Yeah, he's just a great play. He's a great running back as well. Like there's a lot of kind of running backs that are okay tournament plays. Bucky's just the most talented of all of them, so he's going to be who I want to lean to.
Yeah, especially on a slate where we have, $200 cheaper Josh Jacobs drawing a lot of ownership. I think Bucky's still going to be popular. I'm sort of anticipating 15 to 20% for him, but that's still, I think, makes him a pretty solid play here. One of my favorite running back plays on the slate, just 7K. And yeah, I really like that angle that Ryan outlined where, a lot of teams at this point in the year are in sort of must-win situations, and Tampa Bay certainly is, with Carolina right on their heels in the division. Bucky Irving getting fed just makes a ton of sense in this game. I think the only guy that we didn't mention here is Devin Neal, who's getting a ton of snaps, but isn't really seeing much usage. I think if you're desperate and you need like a $5,100 floor running back play, he's okay, but it's been a lot more Taysom Hill, a lot more Tyler Shuck inside the 10. Shuck has 3 designed inside the 10 carries in the last 2 weeks, which is another reason why I like him a little bit given his salary, but think this is one you can stack up in a lot of fun ways. Keep it moving. Seattle Seahawks at the Atlanta Falcons. Total 44.5. Seattle 7-point favorites. No Drake London for Atlanta. Ryan, Sam Darnold was the guy that you highlighted in advanced matchups. Curious what you're seeing there on the Seattle side.
Yeah, so the biggest thing I see in this matchup is the Falcons blitz at the highest rate of any team in the NFL. And we've seen Darnold kind of be very boom or bust against the blitz. So his deep throw rate goes way up whenever he's blitzed, 77% higher deep throw rate than normal. And yes, Darnold's not the best against pressure, but this Falcons pass rush hasn't been quite as invincible as over the past few weeks as over the full season. Like I could kind of see Darnold plus JSN just completely going off this week after JSN disappointed last week. Darnold's priced down a bit. I like this angle. I do think you need to bring it back in some way just to play to the scenario of the Falcons stay in this game. Bijan Robinson, probably the best way to do that, just in terms of who can create explosive big plays on the other side. It's really just Bijan to me. So that's a little bit hard to fit, but it's an angle I'm interested in building around. JSN himself also has a nice schematic matchup, averaging over 7 yards per out run against cover 4, which the Falcons have been playing just over a third of the time over the past month. So yeah, JSN really interesting kind of either way. And then the Darnold game environment bet, also something I'm interested in.
Yeah, certainly like that. And I do think that's a good note that if you're playing Darnold, if you're playing Darnold plus JSN, definitely want someone on the Atlanta side there. Big problem with these Seattle stacks is that they score a ton of points in the first half and then just get you absolutely nothing in the second half. So want to keep an eye out for that. Sam Darnold, 5th in the league in first half passing yards per game. Graham, what do you think of the Atlanta side here? No Drake London. That really hasn't amounted to much for these Atlanta pass catchers. Obviously, though, Kyle Pitts projecting as a pretty decent value. And then, of course, Bijan Robinson shaping up as a strong play again this week.
Yeah, I liked Ryan's Bijan analysis. It's just, he's going to be probably 15% owned. I think people are going to want to play James Cook. I'm certainly going to want to play Devon Achane in that price range, so it's going to kind of keep the ownership down. And then, full fade on Darnell Mooney, full fade on all these Falcons receivers. I think Kyle Pitts is appropriately priced on DraftKings. He's still a value on FanDuel. You just question the upside because he just hasn't scored touchdowns basically his entire NFL career, but it's a good on-paper matchup. Like Seahawks are very, very good against everything, great against outside wide receivers, good against the run. They've kind of struggled against tight ends, 3rd most yards per game, 5th most schedule-adjusted fantasy points to tight ends. So if you want to make the Pitts upside argument, I guess that's it. Ball has to go somewhere, and this is a good matchup, but I still do kind of question the upside with this Kirk Cousins-led offense.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Top 6 matchup, 25% target share in his 3 games with Kirk Cousins and without Drake London. But, yeah, touchdowns have not been there. Whole offense really just flows through. Bijan Robinson. Last guy to discuss here is Kenneth Walker. Ryan, I'm curious what you think of this backfield. I mean, every time we click Kenneth Walker, we somehow get some infuriating Zach Charbonnet touchdown. You look at the usage after. Not often super impressed, but, he's projecting as a decent value again this week, projecting for ownership. What are your thoughts on good old boy Kenny Walker?
Yeah, so I'll try to just keep it to new things to say about Ken Walker, because ultimately it's a similar type of player, type of bet to last week. But what we saw last week and like what we want to avoid when we're building is where the Seahawks get so up that they are playing Zach Charbonnet and Myles Gaskin on these final drives where we would want Walker to be getting that volume. So I think even with Walker, you might want to consider miniing probably just with Pitts on the Falcons. But like when I look at other mini stacks that you can do on this slate, like Walker Pitts is not like the one I really, really want to get to. But yes, I do think one of these weeks Walker is going to break off one or multiple long runs. His usage has been pretty decent for where he's priced right now. So yeah, he's a totally understandable play in tournaments, but I don't think he's going to be like one of my highest rostered players this week.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. Also a top 6 schedule adjusted matchup against Atlanta since week 9. And of course, Seahawks favorite here. Walker has historically performed well when leading, but like Ryan noted, when Seattle's getting a big lead, especially later in the games, we're seeing more Charbonnet and unfortunately some Myles Gaskin as well. Let's keep it moving. Game of the slate. Cincinnati Bengals at the Buffalo Bills. Total here, easily the highest on the slate at 53.5. Bengals are 6-point underdogs. On the injury front, T. Higgins good to go. Dalton Kincaid questionable after limited practices all week. Josh Palmer is doubtful. I want to start with the Bills side here. I think they're fairly straightforward in the sense that Josh Allen, James Cook, both excellent plays. We know that Allen needs a competitive, high-scoring game environment to hit his ceiling. So my big note here is, I want lots of exposure to Josh Allen, lots of exposure to James Cook. But if I am playing Josh Allen, I really want to use a Bengal on the other side. It uses a ton of salary to play Josh Allen and Jamar Chase, but you can capture a ton of upside from this game with that. I think T. Higgins is a fairly reasonable bring-back option as well. I'm not super enticed by the Chase Brown upside, but you could maybe make somewhat of an argument there for him. But that really is my big note there. Graham, I'm curious what you think of this game in general. Any notes on guys we could stack Josh Allen with? I think Gabe Davis and whoever's playing tight end, either Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox, are probably my favorites. Gabe Davis did lead the team in route share last week. But that's the tricky thing with Allen. Don't need to stack him, but if you are, it's like, who do we click here?
I think Allen plus a Bengals receiver actually makes the most sense.
Yeah.
You can go naked Allen. I mean, that certainly is in play in this huge game total. Probably Dalton Kincaid if we get him, especially with all these injury concerns. I mean, he's going to play a part-time role no matter what. So, like, even if he's just out there for his 50% route share, it's an amazing matchup. The guy I really want to play, and I think probably should be on all your DraftKings rosters this weekend, is James Cook. I mean, this price is just so good. Jake, you've been noting all year about how game script sensitive Cook has been in wins versus losses. Well, we get them at 6-point favorites against the Bengals, and oh, by the way, Cook has way more passing down usage and upside as of late. He's got 3 more targets in 4 straight games. Obviously, been a super efficient receiver his entire career, and now he gets this matchup against this linebacker and safety group that's just terrible. I think Cook is my favorite running back play on this slate. I think that even is including JT and Devon Achane and Bijan. He's just like such a slam dunk play. I hesitate playing him and Josh Allen together. I think they're massively negatively correlated. I would not go there. But if there were one spot to do that, it might be here. And it's super contrarian because I think it's obviously negatively correlated, but huge game total. And you just say, listen, like this game shoots out for 70. Burrow's fully back. It could have that upside. The one thing I wanted to note here is it does seem like there's some snow in the forecast, but the game total hasn't moved. I think it's actually gone up a point. So keep an eye on that on Sunday. Obviously, we're not going to concern ourselves with that right now, but just something to note for this game. But I want to just throw it out. Like, how good of a tournament play is Burrow? Because he's kind of in this weird pricing range, right? Like, Allen is priced up correctly. Stafford's now priced up. And then we've got a really good, like, 5K and sub 5K quarterback range this week. I'm interested to see what Burrow's ownership projects at Sunday morning, because right now it's just 5%. And if that sticks, like, he's an awesome tournament play. And the bring back is so easy with Cook.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm right there with you. The bring back is really easy with James Cook. He's our highest projected running back value this week. Obviously, incredible matchup, and gets the game script. And then, Joe Burrow in these sort of must-win situations seems to always play great. I know the advanced metrics weren't particularly good last week, but they did give him 46 pass attempts in a game they were leading starting in the mid-second quarter, which is awesome volume.
They're not dead, dude. They're 2 games back. Like, the Ravens have kind of melted down a little bit. Like, they have an opportunity here to, like, finish 9-8. They got to win out, obviously, but that might be all it needs. Yeah. Pittsburgh's kind of falling apart too. So, I mean, they're full out here.
Yeah, and was certainly encouraging, like I said, that Joe Burrow did get the passing volume last week, even though he admitted, I think, after the game that he was a little rusty. And, I mean, we know who to stack him with. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins are where all the targets are going to go. Ryan, I'm curious if you have anything to add on this game, Joe Burrow as a tournament play, because I do really like the Joe Burrow angle. I think it's a very, very clean stack this week.
Yeah, absolutely love Joe Burrow. I'm going to read off the stat that I stole from you from the Thanksgiving slate, which is Burrow as an underdog over the last 3 seasons is at just under 23 DraftKings fantasy points per game. That would be second best on the slate. But if you further restrict that to just games with above a 48-point over-under, where this game is well above 50, we've got Burrow averaging just under 26 DraftKings fantasy points per game, and he's gone over 30 in half of them. So, yeah, one of the best ceilings of any quarterback on the slate this week belongs to Joe Burrow. Very easy to stack, or easy but expensive to stack. I haven't messed around with builds a lot. I imagine it's kind of hard to get to like Burrow, Chase, Higgins plus James Cook bring back. I think you can get some salary relief by just using like a Dawson Knox on the other side, possibly something to kind of work on. I mean, either Bills tight end would make sense from a bring back angle there, save you a bit of salary, whether Kincaid is playing or not. So that's where I would kind of start with this game. Really love all things Bengals. Should talk Chase Brown a little bit. Like, the result was still fine. The overall volume was still fine for Brown last week in Samaje Perine's first game back. But we saw Perine taking a much larger share of the backfield touches than we might have expected. The Bengals ended up kind of dominating that game, running a ton of plays. So it didn't necessarily show in the box score a ton, but I think Chase Brown is like a legitimately dicey play that is going to possibly see some ownership. We'll check in on that on Sunday, but yeah, he's not my favorite way to attack this game. There's a lot of other angles I prefer.
Yeah, I think I'd rather get to this game through the pass catchers. You can obviously look at just Chase Brown's expected fantasy points, 18.9 last week. Pretty solid. They did run 80 plays, though. So, all of those sort of volume-based stats, at least from their Week 13 game, are going to be a bit inflated because they absolutely dominated the Ravens in that one. I think we covered pretty much every angle here. I guess, Ryan, I'll throw it over to you for a final question. If you are stacking up Josh Allen, is there anyone who stands out? I personally, like I said, I think I just like the cheap options here. Playing a tight end in the best matchup for tight ends, playing a $3,200 Gabe Davis or $3,300 Gabe Davis just because he was out there for the routes, and then that should get you hopefully enough salary savings to get a T. Higgins, get a Jamar Chase in there. But curious if you have any other angles on Bills pass catchers.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to just rank them, I would say Knox, assuming Kincaid is out at the top, would be my favorite. Probably then Davis, then Kincaid if he's playing. Khalil Shakir just kind of last. It should be good for him, like schematic wise. The Bengals do kind of funnel everything underneath. Third most receiving yards per game allowed within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, but that applies to basically all the other names I just said, other than Gabe Davis. All those other guys kind of operate in the shallow area of the field as well. They're way cheaper, And yeah, I'm just like done playing Khalil Shakir with Josh Allen because I'm pretty tilted about how that has run out for us the last handful of weeks.
Yeah, those super low A-dot guys are always a little tough to click for tournaments. Let's keep it moving here. Indianapolis Colts at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Total is 47.5. Colts are favored by 1.5 points. No Sauce Gardner for Indianapolis. Parker Washington is questionable after limited sessions on Thursday and Friday due to a hip injury. Ryan, curious your thoughts on the Colts side. I think the easiest guy to talk about here is Jonathan Taylor. 6 games this season of at least 30 DraftKings points. Also doesn't really have to be worried about getting vultured by Daniel Jones inside the 10, given that Jones is playing through a broken leg. I do think some of these pass catching options are interesting. I'm not sure I can necessarily be convinced to stack up Daniel Jones, but as one-offs, I have a little bit of intrigue in like Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman, Tyler Warren. I think one of the interesting things with these Colts pass catchers is they've all been fairly sensitive to what the opposing defense rolls out in terms of coverages. Ryan, I'm curious if you noted anything regarding the schematic matchups this week for these Colts guys.
Yeah, I'll start with Jonathan Taylor just because my thoughts, I'm like of two minds here kind of. So the note you bring up about Daniel Jones not running inside the 10, that legitimately does matter. That is a legitimate boost. I do think the Colts, if they can, want to be a bit more run heavy with Daniel Jones's injury. If they can just give Taylor 30 plus carries in this game, I think they will. My issue is whether they succeed, right? So the Jaguars allowing under 3.4 yards per carry on man gap rush attempts, which has been the lion's share of what they've run with Taylor this year. We've also seen Taylor be very game script sensitive. It's only a 1.5 point spread. Very easily, the Colts could kind of fall behind, and then you're just in a scenario where they probably want to stay run heavy if they can, if it's at all neutral. But your ideal Jonathan Taylor game script just doesn't seem the most likely here, is what kind of concerns me. He's very expensive, probably not a guy I'm going to have a ton of ultimately. The pass catchers are a little bit more interesting. I think Tyler Warren is actually going to be my favorite. And that's mostly just off of schematic on paper matchup stuff. Jaguars kind of playing a lot more zone, a lot more too high, and they've also been very generous to opposing tight ends that have been split off the line. Second most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed. Warren's only been in line on fewer than 30% of his routes the last month. So that just kind of perfectly fits from an on paper perspective. So kind of like Warren there. Alec Pierce does worry me schematically. As I just said, a lot more too high from this Jaguars defense. And Pierce has had most of his big games in these more single high heavy matchups. So he's still fine. I mean, don't get me wrong, 5,100. He's, I think, leading the NFL in yards per target or like is very high up there. Like definitely has upside, but not my favorite play this week. Michael Pittman is fine. He's the same play that he is every single week. I mean, Pierce has been outperforming him by 14 to 10 fantasy points per game over the past month. Part of that has been the schematic kind of issue. Jaguars are pretty good for opposing outside wide receivers as well. Top 4 schedule adjusted, but ultimately Pittman's still not my favorite. Would prefer to go to Tyler Warren. All these guys are kind of tough to sift through though, and I have a lot more interest, I think, on the Jaguars side once we get there.
Yeah, Jaguars side is pretty interesting. Trevor Lawrence actually right now in our DraftKings projections, top quarterback value currently. Those are always scary words to say. Graham, I mean, that said, the stack is a little bit cleaner this week. No Parker Washington. Things should be a bit more condensed around Jacoby Myers, Brenton Strange, even Brian Thomas Jr. Graham, what do you think of the Jags this week, given that, T-Law's projecting pretty dang well?
Anybody who's been listening to me knows that I question the upside with Trevor Lawrence all the time, and I've been proven right all the time. I mean, you look at his game logs. He scored 25 or more DK in just 3 out of his last 22 starts. That being said, yeah, he does project pretty well. The floor has been better, and I think we were going to be a week early on BTJ. The full-time role last week was great. It was basically the first game all year where he hasn't earned targets, like even with the injuries that he's played through and obviously playing poorly. And now everybody's off of him. He's still overpriced, in my opinion, on DraftKings. Jacoby Myers is cheaper. Brenton Strange is 2K cheaper. No one's going to play it, but I do think BTJ with Lawrence makes a lot of sense. And I think you do double it with Lawrence and just say this is like one of the few games he scores 25 or more. Colts keep this game close. And without potentially Parker Washington, we have just like 3 very clean stacking options. If you are going to double, my preferred way to do it is Brenton Strange by far. I think he's an awesome play just like by himself. If you just need a kind of cheaper tight end, just a great matchup. Colts are giving up the second most yards per game to opposing tight ends. Strange has been awesome. I think we'd be talking about him as like a top 12, maybe even top 10, fringe top 10 tight end in fantasy if he didn't get hurt this year. He's averaging the same amount of yards per game as Tyler Warren. And again, he's just, he's sub 4K. He's a really, really strong play. Jacoby Myers probably leads this team in targets again. He's gotten 27, 20, and 22% of the targets in his last 3. I do think BTJ gets back up into that like 18 to 20% range, and it's pretty like flat throughout. You're really just kind of hunting, this game shooting out and going towards the over. Ryan's points on J2 concern me to that point because like right now I feel like he's really their only avenue to a big play with Daniel Jones kind of being limited. It's not just like his mobility is obviously limited. Steichen probably has it in the back of his mind to like, change play calls from what he would typically do. They did play 2 of the toughest defenses in the league in the Chiefs and the Texans, so I don't want to like, crush him too hard for it, but I think the only thing really holding me back in this game, ironically, is the Colts. For what it's worth, this game total has come down. It was 48.5. It's been bet down to 46.5. Not exactly a bullish signal here, but this is the most I've ever been interested in stacking Trevor Lawrence. As for this backfield, it's so frustrating because like Travis Etienne continues to get the majority, or I guess the plurality of the work. It's gotten a little closer, especially inside the 10. There's been some buzz about Bashal Tutin kind of being the goal line back now. I don't know. I just kind of want to fade it and just lean into the passing game for the Jags here.
Yeah, I really like that analysis. Also, shout out to the comments for catching me on saying Parker Washington out. Parker Washington questionable after limited practices Thursday and Friday. Ryan, anything to add on these Jags pass catchers? I do really like Graham's angle on stacking Trevor Lawrence with BTJ. I mean, no one's going to do it when I ran Sims. I got a lot of Lawrence, no BTJ. It was all Jacoby Myers, all Brenton Strange. In SaberSim when I ran our numbers, and I imagine that's going to be the case for pretty much anyone who optimizes. Just hard to get a good projection on BTJ at 5,900. What do you think, Ryan?
I was also ready to get on here and make the case for BTJ, but also every like smart person I've talked to this entire week has made the case for BTJ or has been receptive to my case for BTJ. It almost makes me like this is just the fantasy point snowball. Like we've all gotten on to BTJ here when the guy hasn't done anything all year, but I do genuinely think it's a smart play. If I were to play Lawrence, it would be with BTJ. Like we all made fun of him for his highlight being like the downfield block last week, but I legitimately do think that matters where kind of BTJ's whole issue, reading between the lines a little bit, is how into the Jaguars is he right now? How into him is the team? Like him doing stuff like that, blocking downfield for Jacoby Myers, like that's interesting at the very least. I think he's a really talented player. I've compared him to like early career Deebo Samuel, where there were some years where he would just show up out of shape or like not putting in the type of effort and just kind of have like these up and down seasons. Maybe we get something similar with BTJ, and we're about to ride the rocket ship back up. I kind of like it. I will just say also Brenton Strange is my favorite play in this game. The only other note I'll add to what Graham said, which was all great analysis, is that the Colts also don't get a lot of pressure, and that has really mattered for Strange because he's very often kind of like the secondary read here. His targets per route run goes from just 0.07 up to 0.27 when Lawrence is kept clean, when he has time to sit in the pocket, go through his reads and throw. So I really like Strange in this spot specifically. yeah, leading the team in receiving yards per game in his healthy games. He's awesome.
Yeah, pretty rough week for cheap tight ends. Brent Strange certainly stands out as one of, if not the best option if you want to save a little salary at the position. Keep it moving to the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Baltimore Ravens. Total here is 42.5. Steelers are 6-point dogs. This game largely clean from an injury perspective. Graham, curious if you like anyone from the Steelers side here. I mean, DK Metcalf popping a little bit in projections, but I feel like I've said that 7 or 8 times this year, and it's never amounted to anything. What do you think of Steelers before we talk Ravens?
Yeah, no, I think Steelers are full fade. You can't trust anybody in their backfield. Can't trust these receivers. I'll throw it back to you, Jake. Derrick Henry's not going to be played like at all, and I mean, coming off a game where he got 39% of the snaps, got 10 carries. Steelers' run defense has been pretty bad for most of the year, kind of up and down, but they've been particularly bad as of late. I'm trying to talk myself into some like tournament Henry making a ton of sense.
Yeah, no, I think it does make a ton of sense. Obviously, there's been something wrong all year with Lamar Jackson. I mean, he's been hurt, and that's trickled down to the Ravens offense as a whole, but this really does just feel like the play Derrick Henry spot. Ravens implied win probability 74% in a neutral on paper matchup. Derrick Henry just under 22 DraftKings fantasy points per game in wins since joining the team. So yeah, projecting for, I'm seeing 8, 10, 12% ownership across the board in terms of his ownership projection. It's that sort of salary range. People are getting to James Cook. People are getting to Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving, who we mentioned earlier. Derrick Henry really isn't going to catch much steam. Ryan, curious what you think of Henry. Any other thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I think specifically if the Bucky Irving ownership starts to seam up, I think Henry makes a lot of sense just as a similar kind of tournament pivot. For all the reasons you outlined, really, he's big favorite. It's hard to trust anybody else on this Ravens offense with Jackson as banged up as he is. And I also would just from a narrative perspective, I think they really regretted kind of getting away from Derrick Henry last game where he was looking amazing early on and then they just kind of stopped giving him the ball. I think there's something to it. The numbers aren't like as amazing as I sort of expected them to be. He's at just under 22 DraftKings points per game in wins since joining the Ravens. He would pretty much have to hit that. You need more than that for him to kind of pay off at 7,500. But we have seen him hit 30 plus a decent number of times the past 2 seasons, so he can do it. So yeah, Henry's solid, and yeah, there's just nothing else in this game I'm really interested in.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. A little similar to DK Metcalf. Zay Flowers is projecting okay across the industry. This is a guy who hasn't scored more than 15 DK since week 1, and I'm really only looking to play Zay Flowers in games where it looks like the Ravens are going to have a shootout, and Ravens offense hasn't been able to hang when the opposing team score a ton of points, and I don't really think Pittsburgh is going to push them here. I think the Ravens get some positive game script finally, can get Derrick Henry going a little bit, so like that is sort of a lower owned tournament running back play. Miami Dolphins at the New York Jets. Total here is 41.5. Dolphins are favored by 2.5. Another fairly clean game from an injury perspective. Ryan, Tyrod Taylor, absurdly cheap, easy to stack. We have A.D. Mitchell, we have John Mechie, 2 guys earning basically all the targets here. A.D. Mitchell getting most of the air yards, Mechie getting a lot of the underneath stuff. Curious what you think of Tyrod because, yet again, I think the stack looks pretty strong this week.
Yeah, I'm not as into the Jets this week. As the leader of the Jets hype train last week, and it was one of the few things I got very right on last week's slate. I just can't get into them this week. Part of it is the schematic matchup where it was just perfect with the Falcons last week, all the single high, all the blitzing. Dolphins, a very different defense. They play a lot more cover 2, which Adonai Mitchell has done almost nothing against in his entire career. Mechie also about 35% less efficient against cover 2 over his career. I mean, the volume has been there. The role has been there for both of them. They still both project decently well, even with them being priced up to 4,500. It's a low priced stack with Tyrod Taylor. So it certainly makes some sense. I do also think the Jets could just lean into the run in this game. They've been a little pass heavier with Taylor, but this is a run funnel Dolphins defense. Top four or bottom four, I should say, by pass rate over expectation allowed. So my read is that this game plays a little bit slower, a little bit grosser. Taylor, not my favorite sub 5K quarterback. I really prefer Tyler Shuck, as we talked about earlier, but he's valid, but I'm probably not getting to him.
Yeah, I think I prefer Tyler Shuck as well. Graham, I'm curious what you think of this, fairly clean Tyrod Taylor double stack here, and then we can talk Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, Dolphins have obviously the players to kind of make this game shoot out, but the Dolphins do blitz quite a bit. To Ryan's point about Cousins. I was looking at Kirk Cousins, Tyrod Taylor against the blitz, but yeah, I mean, I think I like Shuck more. I like Shuck last week. I think he has more upside. He's just more aggressive, throwing down the field. I mean, he's top 10 in deep throw rate, top 10 in average depth of target. Miami, man, I mean, it's just like Devon Achane every week is Achane week. I think you could make this very similar case to the one we made last week for him. It's just, they're 3-point favorites. This game's probably going to be very competitive throughout. Even if the Dolphins are trailing, it kind of doesn't matter because he's got this Christian McCaffrey light type role. Last week was the one week where he hasn't, had a single reception. He's, been 3, 4, 5, 6 every single week beyond last week. I don't really have much interest in anything else. Jalen Waddle's been fine. He's, the correct price now at 6,800. We were playing him when he was really cheap after the Tyreek injury, and now he's not. I just think he's not off the board, but he's just fine. I think I'd rather play some guys below him at the receiver range, and to me, it's just Achane. I kind of wanted to hype up Darren Waller a little bit. I think he looks unbelievable again. He looks so fast for a dude who hasn't played in a year and a half, and he's, 33? Got a full-time role last week, but I don't know if I can get there at this price. Slightly better price on FanDuel, I think. But yeah, 3,800 on DK. I think I'd rather play Strange. I think I'd rather play Fannin as well. Wish he were a little cheaper, but I think I'm just going to jam Achane in all my lineups again. I think that's where I'm leaning.
I think I'm right there with you. If you do want to play Jalen Waddle, FanDuel looks to be the place to do it. He's projecting as a top 3 wide receiver value for us over on FanDuel. Not nearly as good for us on DK. Ryan, anything to add on the Dolphins? I think this is pretty straightforward. Just loving Achane here.
Yeah, I'll hype up Darren Waller a little bit. Why not? I do think this only makes sense if we get to Sunday and Brenton Strange is projecting for way more ownership than he currently is. We have him at 9% right now. If he were to consolidate some more, I think Waller makes a lot of sense as a pivot, only 100 cheaper. I would prefer to play Waller over Harold Fannin just because of the touchdown equity. The Jets have allowed a touchdown on 50% of opposing pass attempts from inside the 10-yard line. That's the 3rd highest rate in the league. And Darren Waller just ranks top 6 among all wide receivers and tight ends in targets per game inside the 10-yard line. The role is awesome there. He's just begging every single week to score a touchdown. So I like him in that context, just that he's the worst pivot off of Strange. If Strange is not super owned, I'm just going to play Strange a bunch, but I think he makes sense for that and that alone.
Yeah. Do like that angle a little bit on Waller. Definitely pay attention to how ownership shakes out. Watch the Sunday morning show with Johnny Proctor and Scott Barrett to get a better grip on ownership before the slate kicks off. Graham, anything you want to
Jake,
say?
you shouted out Waddle at 6,700 on FanDuel. That's a good call. I think Waller might be slightly better, though. 5,100 is awesome for him. That's the same price as Otten, Hawkinson, Ingram, dudes we're just not playing, so...
Yeah, Waller and Ertz both shape up as pretty solid FanDuel plays relative to their respective DraftKings salary. We will talk about Ertz shortly. First, let's talk about easily the worst game on the slate. 33.5 point total for the Tennessee Titans at the Cleveland Browns. Titans are 4.5 point dogs. Dylan Sampson questionable for Cleveland. Graham, it's the defenses. Quinshon Judkins here. Is there anything else that interests you in this game?
No. Titans analysis remains the same. Can't do it. Yeah, Titans defense is a really good value on FanDuel, 3,400. Them and the Vikings are going to be the punt defenses this week on FanDuel. Judkins, like, the workload, if Dylan Sampson misses, then I'll be pretty interested in Judkins at 6,400. I think Sampson got back to a limited practice today. Judkins obviously just hasn't been getting any passing down work at all. He's been very limited in terms of explosive plays on the ground, but him getting like a legit bell cow workload, even attached to this terrible, Browns offense, 4-point favorites. Titans have been better against the run since they got Jeffrey Simmons back, but I would be pretty interested in that. As of right now, I much prefer Breece Hall. I just think he flat out projects better, has more upside, better offense. I think that would be my one way to play Judkins. Other than that, man, this game sucks. Like, it's the worst game we've had all year, legitimately.
Yeah, it is, certainly from a total perspective. One thing I will say on Judkins, in victories, averages 19.9 fantasy points per game. Rare game where the Browns are favored. Titans defense giving up the fourth most rushing fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, and that's largely Judkins' game, is that rushing production. Ryan, there's no way you have anything else on this game, right?
Yeah, no. Titans allowing the fifth most adjusted yards before contact per attempt. It's a good schematic rushing matchup for Judkins. Titans allowing over 5 yards per carry to opposing man gap runs. So I like Judkins probably a bit more than Graham does. It sounds like you can stack him with the Browns defense. But yeah, nothing else to really talk about here.
Yeah, final note is just both defenses, great plays, as Graham noted. Both top 4 values in our defensive projections right now over on DraftKings. Washington Commanders at the Minnesota Vikings. Total is 43.5. Washington now favored by 1.5 because Jaden Daniels is back. Noah Brown is questionable. J.J. McCarthy also back for Minnesota. I think the Washington side is a lot more interesting, is going to require more discussion. I do want to throw out a gross tournament play on the Minnesota side. J.J. McCarthy at 4,700 does legitimately interest me. I get it, right? Like, he's terrible, but he draws the single softest schedule-adjusted passing matchup since Week 9. His alpha wide receiver 1, Justin Jefferson, is at his cheapest price tag since Week 13 of 2020. That was Jefferson's rookie year. I hate it as much as anyone else, but I do think you could do a lot worse, at least in terms of raw projection for a stack. Also a very clean double, between McCarthy, Jefferson, Addison. That's probably all the time we need to spend on that. Ryan, I'm curious what you think of the Washington side here. We have a 6K Jaden Daniels. These wide receivers aren't particularly expensive here. We just saw 14 targets from Terry McLaurin, but he's only 5,200. Zach Ertz projecting okay, like I noted earlier, a little bit better on FanDuel. What do you think of the Washington side?
Yeah, so Jaden Daniels, obviously a very strong play at just 6K. You pretty much have to be interested, regardless of how healthy you want to say he is. Like, this is a player that has gone over 4x this salary in 8 of the 19 games he's played in his career. Like, he just has the upside to smash at this price. So you want exposure, in my opinion. Yeah, the interesting part is, who do we stack him with? I actually kind of am partial to Deebo Samuel here. He's 300 more than Terry McLaurin, but he's been a lot better than you remember this year. If you just exclude one game where he was playing very hurt after like a midweek practice downgrade, 20 DK in 4 of his 10 games, 21 DK in the top 50% of his finishes. Like, there's some legitimate tournament upside to Deebo Samuel. And even more so when we look at this schematic matchup, the Vikings play 2 high looks at the highest rate in the NFL. And even if you just look at Deebo's and Terry McLaurin's games where they're active together, we have Samuel up at a 0.28 target per route run against 2 high, McLaurin all the way down at 0.19. Deebo kind of over his entire career has benefited more from these 2 high looks. Kind of makes sense. Terry McLaurin, much more of like a deep threat receiver. You want to only have one safety there. Yeah, so McLaurin better against single high. That's not this matchup at all. That said, it's hard to ignore what McLaurin just did on a limited route share last week. It was with Marcus Mariota. He has been better even before last game. Just in general, he's been more efficient with Mariota. So that's kind of another angle that pushes me a little bit more towards Deebo Samuel. But yeah, ultimately it's hard to to like talk down too much on McLaurin, who just went for 36 expected fantasy points against Pat Surtain, and again on only 58% route share. Like they're both really good plays, both McLaurin and Debo. I ultimately lean Debo, but I would get it if you're on the other side of that debate.
Yeah, and like I noted, these guys are both very cheap. McLaurin 5,200, Debo Samuel 5,500. Graham, curious if you have anything to add on this game before we move it on.
I think McLaurin's the best receiver play on the slate at 5,200. You don't have to play Jaden Daniels. He's a great price on DK. Just looking on FanDuel, Jaden Daniels is 8,500. So he's way too overpriced on FanDuel. But yeah, like McLaurin, I have a Galaxy brain play. You guys might throw up in your mouth thinking about this, but Chris Rodriguez is 4,700. And yeah, I know. The line flipped. Washington's 1.5 point favorites. He has legitimate touchdown upside. He's got 7 carries inside the 10 to Krosky Merritt's 3 over their last 4 games. He has no passing down upside, but you could say J.J. McCarthy is the worst quarterback in the NFL, and you'd be right. And if that's still the case, and this second layoff hasn't helped, which I don't think it will, I mean, there's legitimate 2 touchdown upside with Chris Rodriguez, especially if Jaden Daniels isn't 100%. There's a chance that, Commanders are 4-8, 4-9. They're dead. I kind of like the Galaxy brain cheap Chris Rodriguez plus Washington defense stack. Listen, it's very, very gross, but he's basically as far as running back pricing goes, he's basically min price, and he's got legitimate touchdown upside.
Yeah, he is cheap. I mean, if you want to punt, you are looking at a C-Rod, Devin Neal. You could even do it with an Aaron Jones in this game, who's only 5,300. I don't know if I'd remove Chris Rodriguez from my tournament pool, but in 150 teams, I doubt I'm getting to more than 1 or 2. Don't think I have anything else on this one. I guess, Aaron Jones, who I did mention, he's projecting okay. Commanders giving up the 5th most schedule-adjusted fantasy points per game to opposing running backs over the last 5 weeks, but I think I'd rather just attack this game through the pass catchers in general.
Oh, I'm with you. It's totally Galaxy, but we're starved for value on this slate. There's some receiver value for sure. We're about to talk through the best one here in this afternoon slate, but I don't know. It's just been percolating in my mind. This game is gross. Maybe Chris Rodriguez scores twice at 4,700.
Yeah, and I mean, just in general, we don't really have many sub 6K running back plays we can feel good about, and there's a pair in this game that are okay. Denver Broncos at the Las Vegas Raiders. Total here is 40.5. Denver favored by 7.5. On the injury front, Max Crosby questionable with a knee injury, certainly notable for the Las Vegas defense. Ryan, Bo Nix projecting as in the sort of mid quarterback tier in terms of ownership, projecting okay. A big part of that is that he has a handful of stacking partners who also project pretty well, are reasonably priced. I think the toughest thing is just figuring out what direction to go between the super cheap Pat Bryant, Troy Franklin, Cortland Sutton. I'm curious if you have any schematic or matchup leans here regarding the Broncos pass catchers for those who do want to play Bo Nix in this spot.
I do. First, I'll say not actually that interested in Bo Nix overall. I mean, Joe Burrow is only $400 more. What are we doing here? I'm playing Joe Burrow. That's understand the stack is way more expensive. That's harder to build, but yeah, that just seems way better to me. But in terms of the pass catchers, I do have a pretty strong lean. Troy Franklin, I really like. I think you can play him as kind of a Galaxy brain tournament wide receiver play at 5,500. The schematic matchup is very strong here from what I'm seeing. The Raiders lead the NFL in cover 3 rate. And Franklin has just been so much better against cover 3, especially over his last 5 games. He has just taken over from Cortland Sutton kind of as the cover 3 beater for the Broncos. 60% boost to his targets per out run, over 350% to his yards per out run just against cover 3 of late. So I think that's really strong. We see Franklin kind of come down a little bit in routes last week with Pat Bryant coming on. Bryant had a midweek hamstring injury. He doesn't have like a game designation, but any sort of midweek hamstring downgrade is always a little bit scary. Will always raise an eyebrow sort of for me. So that's one angle. And also just if you zoom out, like the volume has been amazing for Troy Franklin. 17.4 expected fantasy points per game over his previous 4 games before that dud on Sunday Night Football. That would rank 5th best on the slate. Like the volume could legit be amazing. Great schematic matchup. Had a 42% first read target share the last time he played the Raiders a few weeks ago, who, again, by the way, played 63% cover 3 in that game. So, yeah, I think Franklin is clearly my favorite. Pat Bryant at least is cheap at 3,400 if you just kind of want to get onto the potentially ascending rookie. I think that at least makes some sense. Sean Payton compared him to Michael Thomas back like right after they drafted him and kind of set social media on fire for a couple days. Bryant is legitimately a pretty impressive player to me. He does pop off the screen a little bit, I will admit, but yeah, I do really prefer Franklin as a play. I think if you want to stack Knicks with both of them, that is fine. Sutton also just kind of fine. No like real notes on him. That's pretty much the Broncos pass catchers. I think RJ Harvey is a better play than all of these guys that I just mentioned, though. At only 5,700, we've got a nice 7.5 point spread here. Awesome matchup against the Raiders, 4th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed the past 5 weeks. Harvey is top 3 in fantasy points per snap while leading behind only Jahmyr Gibbs and James Cook. We saw him get all the goal line opportunities last week. It sounds like that is the plan going forward. So yeah, as 5,700, that's pretty easy to me. Harvey's the best play just in this game overall. But yeah, as I said, Franklin pretty interesting to me for tournaments.
Yeah, and I think, this is a slate where we really don't have many sub 4K wide receiver punts. Pat Bryant certainly looking like arguably the best option. I know we are notably higher than industry on Pat Bryant. Definitely agree with Ryan on RJ Harvey. Graham, I'm curious what you think of Ashton Genty here, who is also projecting as a really strong value across the industry, projecting to be fairly chalky. Just earned a career-high snap share in his first game under their new play caller, 5+ targets in 5 straight games. What do you think of Genty here?
Bad chalk. Raiders haven't been able to run block all year. Broncos are going to try to sell out to stop the run. Genty's getting this, increased passing down role, but like I really question the upside. He basically has one game where he really smashed this year, and it was against the Bears in a very competitive game script. And that was a Bears run defense at the time that was arguably the worst in the league, maybe the second worst behind the Bengals. Since then, he's really had no upside, under 3 yards per carry in nearly every game. His longest carry in that span is 13 yards. We're looking for big plays. I think Brock Bowers is the nuts, though, especially on DraftKings. 6K is really nice. This price is amazing. I love the many with Bowers and Harvey. And I think the ownership's going to be pretty low, Jake. People are going to be concerned about the Raiders really kind of not targeting Bowers in their last game against the Broncos. I just think that was stupid. You look at their last 2 games, they just got killed by Travis Kelce, 9 catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown in week 11. They had their bye, and then Ertz killed them last week, 10 catches, 106 yards. There's no reason that Brock Bowers shouldn't get 10, 12 targets in the spot, and the Raiders are probably going to get stomped. The only other thing I'll add on this game is I understand why Bo Nix is projecting well. I think his floor is pretty good. I really question the ceiling. Just basically how do the Raiders keep this game close? I know the Broncos have played in a million close games, but 7.5 point spread on the road in Vegas is very strong. Broncos obviously have a great pass rush to just nuke Geno Smith, which could nuke Bowers and my love for him. But I think Harvey is a very, very strong play to Ryan's point, but I could see Bowers being like the guy you have to have at tight end this week, given Trey McBride's price and kind of like we've been talking. This is a good tight end slate, but there's really not a whole lot of value. I think you can make an argument that Bowers is probably the best value at 6K.
Yeah, certainly right there as one of the best values. Really like that mini stack between Bowers and Harvey, and do largely agree, at least for tournaments, with Graham's analysis on Ashton Genty, if he's going to be super popular. I think from a floor, even median perspective, he looks pretty good, but I do have serious doubts about the ceiling in this matchup. Ryan, anything else to add on this game before we talk Rams-Cardinals?
Yeah, I just want to give like another little +1 to Brock Bowers. He wasn't that involved in their last game against the Broncos. I think part of that is he's just been targeted a lot more against man coverage this year, 30%-ish boost to his targets per out run. And the Broncos weren't playing man when Pat Surtain was out. They've gotten back to it this past game some more with Surtain back. Surtain will see Bowers some, but he's probably playing hurt, at least to some extent. Just got roasted by Terry McLaurin. So, I think Bowers is a really strong tournament play.
Love that. Let's keep it moving to the Los Angeles Rams at the Arizona Cardinals. Rams are 8.5-point favorites. Total here, 44.5. Injuries. Marvin Harrison Jr. is out. Greg Dortch is out. Trey Benson is out. Amari DiMercado is out. Xavier Weaver, questionable with a hamstring injury. Graham, that leaves things very condensed on the Arizona side. Jacoby Brissett's been priced up to 5,700. The pass volume for Brissett has been incredible, and I mean the results have been really good too. He hasn't scored fewer than 20.8 DraftKings points in an individual game this season. Actually averages 22.6 DraftKings fantasy points per game. That's 1.9 more than any quarterback on this slate, not named Josh Allen, of course priced as the QB10, and it feels like a very clean double stack, Graham, between Brissett, Michael Wilson, Trey McBride. Of course, paying $8K for a tight end feels tough, but I mean, all of McBride's numbers suggest he is certainly worth the $8K price at this point in the season.
Yeah, I mean, he's the new Rob Gronkowski, and I remember playing Gronk at these prices, and when he was in his prime. So yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. With Brissett, Michael Wilson though, I mean, I think Terry McLaurin is pretty close to him in terms of best receiver play on the slate. It's either one of those two, and like you mentioned, it's really just the volume. Like, obviously, Wilson has been awesome. Looks like a totally different player, but yeah, 46.7 pass dropbacks per game. I forgot to look this up. I wanted to look up and see how many like that was over the last 20 years. It's got to be one of the highest of all time. But no Harrison, no Dortch. Wilson's had 30% of the targets in his 2 games without Harrison. I mean, he's kind of just a lock button play, especially on FanDuel. He is just way, way too cheap. They just completely messed his price up. I think he's 5,700 over there. But yeah, 5,700 is ridiculous. So he's going to be 50% owned probably on FanDuel. Like, just lineups come preloaded with him. I can't really find a good reason to fade it. Especially in this game, man. Like, Rams 8.5-point favorites. They've got to win to keep up with Seattle. That game a couple weeks from now against Seattle is probably going to decide the division. This is a huge game for the Rams. The only other thing I wanted to add is Jacoby Brissett is, I mean, every single week he's like a lock for 20 DK. The price is still really great, 5,700. He's actually come down. He was, we were jamming him when he was under 5K. He was 5,800 last week. He's still 5,700. He's an even better play on FanDuel. Again, probably going to be very, very chalky. I think the only argument against Brissett is just this Rams pass rush, but they kind of haven't been that great. The last 8 weeks, they're actually 31st in pressure rate. They obviously have the upside and the talent to be better than that, but Brissett against this Rams pass rush, that's kind of been just meh. I mean, he's QB4 in fantasy points per game, guys. So that's only behind Dart, Allen, and Mahomes this season, and he's just way too cheap again. So I will be playing some Brissett, that's for sure. The Rams are I think trickier just in the sense that they're just overpriced, slightly overpriced. I think Puka, Adams. Obviously, the targets are very condensed. I've been struggling to find angles to play Rams this week, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough with the way pricing has broken. Yeah. I mean, I think I'd rather play a guy like Jamar Chase than Puka Nacua. And, the other tricky thing with these wide receivers is Devontae Adams is stealing all the touchdowns. I think one of the crazier stats I found this week. In terms of end zone targets, Devontae Adams has 24, which actually ties for the most in fantasy points data history with several games remaining in the season. Puka Nacua has 3. So there is, Devontae Adams is this team's goal line back, and Puka Nacua is kind of soaking up all the yards. I believe Devontae's only hit the 100-yard bonus once this season. So, we sort of get this gross split wide receiver volume, even though, both guys have obviously been great this season. Ryan, what do you think about these Rams pass catchers here?
First, I want to say this is my favorite game to stack. These are 2 of the only teams in the league that actually want to throw right now. They're both ranking top 3 in pass rate over expectation. Yeah, I think this is a very easy potential shootout. I kind of do like the Rams in playing it from the Matthew Stafford side of things. And my favorite way to do that is just playing Devontae Adams. He keeps scoring all the touchdowns, so let's just play him. It's kind of how I look at it. And it also makes sense schematically, right? So the Cardinals do a lot of cover 0 blitzing, especially when they get inside the 10. We have seen Stafford and Adams attack the 0 blitz better than any other quarterback wide receiver pairing in the league. Literally half of Adams' touchdowns have just come against cover 0, leads the NFL in target share against it. Stafford is basically top 3 in every relevant statistic against the 0 blitz. He can just handle it. He trusts Adams to win quickly in those one-on-one man situations. So, yeah, I just think there's an awesome chance Adams scores multiple touchdowns in this game. The Rams have faced 3 of the top 12 teams by cover 0 rate inside the 10. Adams is literally just averaging 2 touchdowns, just over 21 DraftKings points per game in those contests. So I really like Adams. He gives you a bit of salary relief off of Puka Nacua. You can just very easily go Stafford, Adams, bring back with Michael Wilson, or you can just use Adams as the Rams bring back. I think that also makes a lot of sense. I would agree with all the Cardinals analysis. Jacoby Brissett, probably a stronger overall play just than Stafford. So you can kind of play it from either side the way I look at it, but yeah, I really want to, is what I'd say. Puka's good. Not to say that Puka is a bad play. Cover 4, he's been a lot better against in terms of yardage, but that's just the thing. Like, Puka can get all the yards he wants at 8,700. Like, we need the touchdowns, and I'm not sure that they're coming in this matchup. It just seems like a very good Devontae Adams touchdown hog type of spot. Maybe the only other name to mention in passing is Kyren Williams, but as we've been saying, I think the upside really resides with the pass catchers here. Even with the Rams being big favorites, we've seen them stay aggressively pass heavy. Seems like we're going for awards, for accolades, for records, for Matthew Stafford, for Devontae Adams. So I don't really want to go to Kyren.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on Kyren. Only other guy that I wanted to throw out there, and this is very thin, only for our 150 max lineup guys out there, of which I am one. Elijah Higgins at 2,500. A little interesting as just a total punt here. He's run about 40% of his routes from the slot. Obviously, no Greg Dortch, no Marvin Harrison. That does open up a lot of vacated slot routes. I could see Higgins' route share jumping from 35% to maybe closer to 60, especially if we end up missing Xavier Weaver as well. And, at 2,500, don't need to do too much to hit value. And again, this is a slate that is very starved for value. All right, let's wrap this up with the Chicago Bears at the Green Bay Packers. Total here is 44.5. Bears are 6.5 point underdogs. On the injury front, Rome Odunze is out. Jaden Reed and Matthew Golden, both questionable for Green Bay. Graham, the Bears obviously don't want to throw. Ben Johnson has been shit-talking his own quarterback this season. But, Caleb Williams at 5,600. Stacks are a little bit more condensed. And they're 6.5 point underdogs. Is this a week where I can interest you in a little bit of Caleb Williams, just given the cheapness of the double here?
I just want to play Brissett. I know it's interesting from that sense that no one's going to be on it, and it's a lot more condensed this week, but Brissett is just objectively a way better play. That being said, I do have a little interest in Luther Burden at 3,800, taking on a bigger role. He's already been playing a lot more. Question the upside because Caleb Williams, like you said, has struggled. Accuracy is still not very good. He's still like to bottom 10 in all of our accuracy metrics at Fantasy Points Data. But he does have 16% of the targets over the last 3 weeks. That's just a hair more than Colston Loveland and DJ Moore. So again, 3,800. This is the Burden week. I wish Scott were on this show to relentlessly hype Burden up, but I think he's a really, really strong play. I do question how chalky he's going to get. I think he's, once everybody kind of updates their projections over the weekend, he's going to project extremely well, probably going to pop in optimizers and Sims just because we're dying for receiver value or any value really on this slate. If we could combine DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai, then I just hammer it. I think that's like the one angle in this game for the Bears is, the Packers have allowed 90 or more rushing yards in 7 straight games. 5 of those 7 have been well over 100, I think 110 or more. They have a great pass rush. Their secondary has definitely held its own. But, man, I just I don't know if I can do it with these Bears backs, man. I know the upside's there, but the process is just, it's really tricky. And it kind of just seems like whoever's on the field when they ever get in the red zone is going to be the goal line back. So it's really hard to predict, but that was my one angle in this game. I think the Bears run game has some serious juice. I have no clue who to play.
Yeah, I mean, it's just tough in these split backfields, and this has been pretty much exactly 50-50 over the last couple of weeks. Ryan, what do you think of Bears overall here? I think, a lot of these pass catchers are going to pop in projections between DJ Moore, Luther Burden, who Graham already talked about, and of course, Colston Loveland at 3,200 as well.
Yeah, I mean, Burden has probably the best schematic matchup of the 3. You can say that that's small sample, which everything is with Luther Burden. But yeah, he's been a lot better against zone coverage, which the Packers run at a top 3 rate. I think he's pretty interesting. Even DJ Moore at just 1,000 cheaper, also pretty interesting. Yeah, he's been the one leading the team in routes each of the past 3 weeks. Is kind of taken over the number 1 role from Odunze, extremely cheap. So yeah, all 3 of them are kind of fine, but I don't feel like any particular way about Bears stacks or really any of the three potentially viable Bears this week. I think you can chuck any of them on to like as a single play or as like a bring back if you want to do some stuff with Jordan Love and the Packers, which I would love to talk about.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you in terms of these Bears pass catchers where I just want a decent bit of exposure to, all of DJ Moore, Loveland, Burden. Burden, I think, is the guy who you're going to see get steamed the most in terms of raw ownership because, like Graham noted, we are just really struggling for value on this slate. Speaking of value, though, Ryan, Christian Watson obviously projecting really well, and any slate that has Christian Watson, especially a solid Christian Watson projection, I'm going to ask you what you think of Packers pass catchers and, of course, your boy Christian Watson.
I like it. So, yeah, I'm always nervous when these players that I love and that I truther for go from nobody cares to now they are the chalk. But, yeah, Christian Watson projecting for some ownership at 5,200. And I think rightfully so. I think there is a lot of upside here. Matchup-wise, the Bears allowing the 5th most receiving yards per game on the deep ball. Watson actually leading the NFL in catchable deep targets per game right now. Jordan Love ranking tied for 2nd in deep throw rate since Watson returned from his injury. I think Watson's great by himself, and I think you can stack Jordan Love with him in this spot. We saw the Packers come out a little bit more pass heavy last week, and I think part of the reason there might just be that Josh Jacobs is playing kind of hurt. There was a quote from him this week where he was basically saying, I don't want to say that I feel any better than last week. My knee is pretty much the same. We've seen him when he's been playing through injury this year, not play nearly as many snaps. He was down at a 55% snap rate, 11.6 XFP last week, pacing to be the highest owned running back on the slate. I certainly get it. The upside is there if he's healthy and he's getting his full usual workload, running as many routes as he has at some points this year. But I'm just really tempted to fade a chalky Josh Jacobs here. Go with the Jordan Love, Christian Watson stack. You can make it a double if you'd like. You can toss on a Dontavian Wicks or Romeo Dobbs. Either of them are fine. But yeah, just love Watson is a really strong angle to me on this slate, and it all works as leverage on a chalky Jacobs.
Yeah, and our Watson projection is very, very strong. I believe the highest in the industry, is one of our top values. Graham, curious if you have anything to add on these Packers pass catchers or Jacobs before we get out of here.
I agree with Ryan. I think Jacobs is trending towards bad chalk. The price is just so good. I think people are going to just get sticker shock on that one. And yeah, Watson is awesome, particularly over on FanDuel, 6,200. We're kind of chasing the touchdowns a little more over there. He's a really, really strong value for FanDuel. And I think Watson and Burden mini stacks kind of might be my favorite way to play this game. Just thinking it through with you all.
Yeah, you're going to get really strong projection relative to the salary that you spend, and that'll help you pay up for a lot of the stars on this slate that we all want to get to. Certainly like that angle. And don't think I have anything else on this one, so that'll do it.
I would just say Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden, watch their statuses. That will affect
for sure.
somewhat how interesting Watson is, or Wicks, especially whether he's viable. But yeah, we don't know if either of those two are playing yet.
I think, and Ryan, this might be a interesting thing to talk to before we get out of here. I think even if Reed and Golden are active, Watson is still going to lead the team in routes and pretty easily be the favorite to lead the team in targets. That sort of does kill Dontavian Wicks for me, though, if both of those guys are up. And it does make the double stack, I think, if you're double stacking Love, a little bit tougher. What are your thoughts, Ryan?
Yeah, that's how I'd see it. I think Watson is just clearly the wide receiver one, and the rest of them become way harder.
Yeah, Golden was already sort of trending down in terms of routes, but I know the team wants to get Jaden Reed out there if he is healthy. So keep an eye on their status. But that'll do it for Week 14 Cashing Points. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in, all the comments, all the views, and we will see all of you guys at the top of the leaderboards.
What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.